Can dead people give birth? Yes, it does sound bizarre, but we might have a little news here that would sound even more bizarre. So, this did happen in real life, and the story dates back to the medieval period. Was the baby saved? In the 7th or 8th century, a pregnant woman died and was buried in the medieval Italian town of Imola. At first glance, her story seemed ordinary, but when her grave was discovered in 2010, two strange details emerged that turned her death into a gripping mystery. Between her legs lay the tiny bones of her fetus, suggesting a post-mortem birth. Even more puzzling, archaeologists found a small hole in her skull. What could have caused such an unusual and tragic series of events? When a pregnant woman dies and gives birth after death, it is called a coffin birth. This rare and disturbing phenomenon happens when gases build up inside the body of a deceased pregnant woman. This would force the fetus out of the birth canal. This has been observed occasionally in archaeological finds. Also, the hole inside the skull was neat and clean. So, we can say that it was not caused by violence, but by a surgical procedure called trepanation. Trepanation involves drilling a hole into the skull. It has been practiced since ancient times for various reasons. Drilling a hole was a method to treat head injuries and other medical conditions. The woman's skull also had a small, straight cut, which might show where her scalp was peeled back for the trepanation. Scientists believe the woman might have suffered from preeclampsia or eclampsia. This is a pregnancy-related condition characterized by high blood pressure, liver problems, and seizures. In ancient times, trepanation was thought to relieve symptoms like fever, pressure in the brain, and convulsions. Signs of healing around the hole in her skull suggest she lived for about a week after the procedure. Now, as reported by Brandon Spector for Life Science, a paper published in World Neurosurgery tries to explain what happened to the woman before and after her death. The remains of the unfortunate mother were found face up in a stone grave, showing that she had been deliberately buried. Scientists at the University of Ferrara and the University of Bologna analyzed the remains and found that the woman was between 25 and 35 years old when she died. Her fetus, whose gender could not be determined, appeared to be at the 38th week of pregnancy, just 2 weeks before full term. According to George Vorsky from Gizmodo, the baby's legs were still inside the mother, but the head and upper body seemed to have been born after she died. The study's authors think this grave shows a rare case of postmortem fetal extrusion or coffin birth. This happens when gases build up in a dead pregnant woman's body and push the fetus out. This grim event is rarely seen in archaeological records. Why would medieval doctors perform such a dramatic procedure on a heavily pregnant woman? It's unclear if she died from the pregnancy condition, the surgery, or another problem, but the research team is excited by the discovery. Evidence of trepanation is found in many ancient remains, but it's rarely seen in skulls from the European Middle Ages. The post-mortem coffin birth makes this grave even more unusual and may help us understand how medieval doctors tried to help at-risk pregnant women. Trepanation started long before the 19th century, when modern neurosurgery began. The word trepanation comes from the ancient Greek word trypanon, which means borer or drill. Though there are some differences in how trepanation was done in various times and places, the basics are the same. Today, doctors perform a similar procedure called a craniotomy. In a craniotomy, part of the skull is removed to allow access to the brain for surgery. Unlike trepanation, which leaves a permanent hole in the skull, the modern method of craniotomy involves putting the removed bone segment back in place. Surgeons only perform a craniotomy for serious reasons, such as removing a brain tumor or treating an aneurysm. Why did our ancestors think it was necessary to pierce the skull, and how far back does trepanation go? Researchers have been exploring these questions for years. The oldest skulls showing signs of trepanation are from the Mesolithic period, around 6000 BC, found in North Africa, Ukraine, and Portugal. Other examples from the Neolithic period showing more advanced techniques come from the Czech Republic, France, and parts of South America. Trepanation didn't stop with the Stone Age, it continued to evolve. Ancient Romans and Greeks practiced it, and it was noted by Hippocrates and Galen, early pioneers of modern medicine. There is also evidence that trepanation occurred in medieval Europe, including Spain, though it was much less common. According to a 2011 study, only a few cases are known from this period in Europe. In South America, particularly in Peru, trepanation became very popular and precise between the 14th and 16th century. The reasons behind ancient trepanation or drilling holes in the skull are still not completely understood. Different cultures did it for different reasons. Fernando Ramirez Rossi and Elaine Froment suggest that in the Neolithic era, people might have done it for medical reasons. They believe early humans practiced on animal skulls, citing examples of a boar skull and a cow skull with trepanation marks. They even think trepanation might have been done on a living cow as a veterinary procedure. If so, this would be the earliest evidence of veterinary surgery. If it was for a practice, it would be the earliest example of surgical experimentation on animals dating back to 4000 BC. In medieval Europe, trepanation had various purposes depending on the culture. For example, in Hungary, it was done ritually after death. But other European groups performed it on living people, possibly to treat physical injuries, mental health issues, or epilepsy. Everyone now agrees that trepanation should remain in the history books. While trepanation is rarely practiced today, some individuals believe in its benefits. Despite its ancient origins and occasional use throughout history, trepanation is best left to the medical history books. This isn't something you'll hear about often, especially in modern medical discussions, thanks to the widespread use of embalming. Embalming involves replacing the body's natural fluids with chemical preservatives and disinfectants, which drastically reduces the likelihood of coffin births. Now, let's talk about what usually happens when a body decomposes. Our bodies are full of bacteria, especially in the stomach and intestines. After death, these bacteria start breaking down tissues, producing gases as a byproduct. These gases build up and cause the body to swell. In some rare cases, this gas pressure can push the uterus downward and even inside out, forcing it out through the vaginal opening. This process is known as prolapse. If there is a fetus in the uterus, the pressure might push it out too, mimicking childbirth. But there are key differences between this and a regular birth. In a natural live birth, the mother's contractions help thin and widen the cervix to deliver the baby. In a coffin birth, it's the gas buildup in the decaying body that forces the fetus out. It's a grim reminder of how powerful and unpredictable natural processes can be, even after death. The first recorded case of a coffin birth happened way back in 1551. A pregnant woman, tried and hanged by the Spanish Inquisition, was left hanging after her execution. Just 4 hours later, 2 stillborn infants fell from her body. This was surprising because it happened so quickly after her death. Without more details about the conditions, it's hard to say if decomposition sped up unusually or if something else was at play. Fast forward to 1633 in Brussels, a woman died during severe convulsions, and 3 days later, a fetus was spontaneously expelled from her body. Another case occurred in Weissenfels in 1861, where a pregnant woman died and 60 hours later, a fetus was pushed out of her body. The case of the pregnant woman from Imola is just a reminder how crude the ancient medical practices were. What are your thoughts on such practices? Let us know in the comments below. Also, hit the like and subscribe buttons to watch such exciting contents.